So the experience is really just for me to get to know their history. What is their leadership history? Like, what is your footprint? What style of leader are you, right? And so that's really the first 3 or 4 sessions, right? To really get that, right? Because what always comes out is not just what their style is, but what their biggest leadership complaint or weakness is.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets, the podcast where we talk with successful career coaches on how they built their success and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is Davis Nguyen, and I'm the founder of Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, and even $100,000 weeks. Before Purple Circle, I've grown several 7- and 8-figure career coaching businesses myself, and have been a consultant at 2 career coaching businesses that are doing over $100 million each. Whether you're an established coach or building your practice for the first time, you'll discover the secrets to elevating your coaching business.
Welcome to Career Coaching Secrets Podcast. I'm Pedro, and today's guest is Michael Holmes, owner at HMA Consulting Group, where he leads teams delivering tailored solutions in learning and development, change management, and leadership growth. With certifications as a Six Sigma Black Belt and continuous improvement professional, his work focuses on building practical systems that drive measurable organizational impact. He previously served as a city council member and corporate training leader, blending public service and enterprise strategy to champion innovation, sustainability, and inclusion. Passionate about continuous learning, he also shared his insights through speaking, mentoring, and thought leadership platforms. Welcome to the show, Michael. Happy to have you here, man.
Pedro, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Wow. I'm so great to have you. I'm super excited. And we were talking pre-podcast, right? And we were talking about your background. I'm gonna lay it out, and I always like to start with the origin story, man. You caught a nerd here. So nerd alert, Captain America, there's a shield behind him in case you're just listening. And I like to rewind a bit, because every coach has that moment where they look at their life and say, yeah, I guess this is what I'm doing now, right? So when was that for you?
Wow. So just a little bit about the background here. I'm a 50 year comic book aficionado, and I'm currently still a city councilman. I won re-election in 2023, so I'm in the middle of a term. So I'm still serving in public service. But the background has to do with my own podcast. During the pandemic, I started what a podcast called Superhero Politics, where I talk about the political undertones of comic books. And so I've been doing that now for a few years, and it's been successful beyond, what I anticipated, as a podcaster. And so, but my history though, like my first really understanding of that I had the ability to be a coach was I was in high school playing sports, and a little league rec team needed a coach. And so as a high school student, I took on the head coaching job of some 7 and 8-year-olds. And my experience playing sports and competing, I was able to connect to those kids. And, they hadn't won a game up until the point when I took over coaching them. And then we won our last 3 games of the season. And so, I just to be able to relay information in a way that resonates with people, and that they can understand it and they can actually access it and use it for their growth. I discovered that pretty early on, and it's translated through my career. I've got more than 8,000 hours of in-classroom training and coaching of different levels of the value stream. And so it's always been a part of what I've done. And even as an elected official, I spend a great deal of time coaching other elected officials and relaying information to my constituents so that they understand it. And I think that's the essence of coaching. Do people receive what you're giving them? And if they do, how does it elevate them to the next level? And that should be kind of the charge of every coach with their client.
Interesting. I love that. Especially, and I want to highlight one point here, and I think it's super important. It's like, you caught that young, right? You caught those kids, and you're helping them, and then some shift happened, right? You something changed and you use that. I would say kind of weaponize that, right, for the business side. So
No, I like that. I like that.
you're right. So
I like
when did
it.
it?
I like it.
When did it shift from
Yeah.
I'm helping people, right? Just like
Mhm.
Spider-Man when he was trying to fight his wrestle matches and all
Yep.
that, to I'm building a real business around this. I'm turning to a superhero, really, the big real deal,
Yeah. It was 2023.
Mm.
I was traveling very frequently to Europe with the company that I was with at the time, and um, I was also just running for reelection, and I had to make a decision on: am I going to be present in this job that the voters and the constituents are electing me to? And I needed to be able to be home. And so I decided at that point, I have been doing this for other companies, creating value for other companies for 27 years. And if I can do it for them, I certainly can do it for myself. And it solved two problems, right? I was in control of my own schedule, in control of my own time, and I was able to go into different companies and see their processes and help them help identify and build their current leadership and the future leadership, because we do a lot of work with the emerging leaders. And so being able to be part of that, the growth of multiple companies, it was really exciting to me. And, in 2023, we incorporated. And in 2024, we jumped out there with a few clients. And then it's grown since then. We've doubled in size in the last year. And, most of our business comes from referrals. So some of the clients that we've coached and that we're currently coaching, they send other people to us. And so I think that's a testament to what we're delivering as a product.
Interesting. So it's pretty recent. We're talking 2 to 3 years, but
Mhm.
I want to understand, and especially I want to highlight, it's like after you got rolling, right? Who are
Mhm.
the people that kept showing up? The ones you realize, okay, this is my ICP, this is my ideal client profile.
Yeah.
Because at the start, there's a lot of testing, right? We're
Sure.
trying to sense things, but where do you see yourself like, hi, hey, this is my tribe,
Yeah. Ironically enough, it was kind of the tribe that I built in my last role. And the last role that I had before I left, when I left corporate America, was a corporate training manager. And so all across different companies, I would work with HR generalists and training leaders, and we had kind of a network of trainers and folks who led the corporate training effort. And so, ironically enough, when I left, they all reached out to me and said, "Hey, we really love to continue working with you. How do we do it?" And so at that time, my client book started to fill up because we wanted to, we had a proven record of knowledge and delivery that they knew about. And so now they had an opportunity to access that in a way that they hadn't before when I was employed by one of their competitors. And so I really left corporate America with a very full network of startup clients. And so I built that over the last 20 plus years. Because when people found out that I was out on my own, they started reaching out. And so, like I said, I haven't had to do a whole lot in terms of business development. Referrals have come because of the relationships that I built when I was in corporate America.
Interesting. I love how natural and organic that is, right? You,
Yeah.
you kind of
Yeah.
have that those connections already, so
Hmm.
you just transition to your own business. So that makes
Sure.
perfect sense. Now,
Yeah.
that's the coaching side, right? And
Yeah.
now let's talk about the part nobody escapes:
Sure.
marketing, right?
Yes.
And I know you kind of browse through it, right? You mentioned
Mhm.
referrals, but I want to understand, how do people usually find you? Is it just through referrals, or how does that play out?
No, I mean we're obviously on the web, and we have a social media presence that's growing. But wherever you can search for coaching, consulting, learning development, you can find us. Like I said, we're on the web, and we're on social media, and so we have a growing presence, and so we do a lot. And this year we'll be launching some online webinars, inviting people to on specific subjects. And so we'll do a lot in the marketing side. But like I said, our growth has come from referrals, and 2026 and 2027 It's really, we're really going to lean into the business development side, because now we're looking to scale, right? Like now we know that we can do it. Now that we know that we can turn a profit, and we were blessed to turn a profit in year one, and 1.5 times we won, in 1.5x that in 2025. And so now that we know that we can do it, now it's time to scale, right? Now that we know we have a proven product, proven delivery, now it's time to scale. And so that's really going to amp up our marketing. So that means we're going to have to lean in to the social media aspect of it. And I'm going to have to bring someone on. I had an intern in the summer who did great things and set up a lot of our social media accounts and improved those. But we'll bring someone on. We'll bring on someone who's going to do full-time business development. And, we're going to grow. Like we're really going to grow this thing because we prove we can.
Nice. I love it. Exciting.
Yeah, it
now,
is.
let's talk business for a second, Michael.
Sure.
Okay. So people find you, they resonate with your work and find you through a referral, your social media, and eventually they want to know what working with you actually looks like, right?
Sure.
So everyone builds their coaching business a bit differently. So when someone actually becomes a client, right? So what does that experience look like right now?
Yeah, well, a lot of it is the fact finding phase. It's kind of like the relationship, right? You see the best parts of each other when you first go out on the first couple of dates, right? But it's really not until that third or fourth date that you really see the crazy, right?
You're introduced. You're telling me you're introduced to the family, the mother-in-law, the wild brother.
So the experience is really just for me to get to know their history. What is their leadership history? Like, what is your footprint? What style of leader are you, right? And so that's really the first 3 or 4 sessions, right? To really get that, right? Because what always comes out is not just what their style is, but what their biggest leadership complaint or weakness is. I always figure that out before I figure out the strengths. And so at that point, I start to build the strategy on how do we shore up that weakness? How do we turn that weakness into a strength? And so subsequent sessions, that's what we build on. We come in every week and, we don't just get right into it. There's not just tools, right? We get in and I learn about you, right? Because the one thing leaders often don't have is someone that they can get this, let the steam off with, right? And so, we're here as colleagues. I'm here as your coach. My ultimate goal, my only goal as your coach, is to make you the best possible leader that you can be. And you'll guide me in that. Like I take guidance from the client. And so I just provide some tools and a receptive ear, and I challenge them, right? We don't necessarily call what we do leadership coaching. We call it a personal leadership strategy, because you have to have a plan, right? Like you're not going to leave a coaching session with HMA and not have a plan for growth. And that's one of the things that we offer to our clients.
Okay. I need to emphasize one thing. And I know because we talked before the podcast, but just to clear up to everyone who's listening, we're talking about in-person, right? We're talking about in-person coaching because we see a lot of digital coaching out there. So I would love to emphasize that. That's the first thing. But I have the feeling I need to dive in a little deeper in something here that I feel like I could tap into your experience, okay? Which is the difference between coaching and consulting, because I see a lot of former consultants that actually shift towards just coaching. And it seems like we're talking about HMA, about a hybrid strategy. Is that something where I'm looking at? I just want to understand.
You absolutely nailed it. Because here's the thing, like we can go in from a consulting side and we can teach you conflict resolution. And we can go through a class, we can go through several modules, we can go through several sections of a class, and we can teach you all of the tools to conflict resolution. What happens at the end of that? Like, what's the application? How do we know if this took? How do we know that you're applying this correctly? How do you know that we know that we're seeing results? That's when the coaching comes in, right? And so sometimes it works in reverse. Sometimes we go in and we have someone who wants to do leadership coaching, but then we discover those leadership weaknesses. And so then we train. And so then we consult. And so it is a hybrid model, right? We don't believe that we can just consult with a client and not coach them. We don't believe that we can coach a client and not consult on their systems, because a lot of times leaders will succeed or fail based on the systems that they inhabit within their workplace. And so we give you all of that, right? We go in and we analyze your systems and we say, hey, you're not failing because you're a bad leader. You're failing because your system is failing you. Let's work on both. And so that's where the consulting come in. And then we coach you on your individual and personal leadership strategy.
Interesting. Okay. Now I need to dive in a little bit deeper because I
Let's
love
keep
this
going.
topic. I love
Let's
this
keep going.
topic. Okay. The thing is, and I think this is important because you're like 2 to 3 years in the game right now. It's in your own business. I know you have plenty of experience, but how to navigate, and I'm not sure if that happened to you already, but I had guests that happened to them, like how to navigate a conversation when the person that hired you is actually the problem. You know what what I'm saying? It's like you're hired by someone like in a consulting way, and they're like, "Hey, fix my team," and you're like,
Yeah.
in reality, it's not the team. How do you navigate that?
Well, I think there's one thing that I always say as a consultant or a coach: you don't ever lie to the client. You never sell the client a falsehood. And so we are data driven. And so one of the things that I always look at with leaders is I look at turnover rates. I was in HR for a long time. I worked with a lot of HR generalists, and I look at turnover rates. I look at exit interviews, right? And so if I start to see a trend that this guy runs off every single person that he works with, then I go to them with data and I let them know that people don't quit jobs, they quit leaders, right? And so it's a hard acknowledgement, but if you show them data, if they're a real leader, if there's someone who's there that is really interested in growth, they'll take it to heart and they'll listen to the coaching that comes after that. But don't ever lie to the client. If you do your analysis, if you do your fact-finding analysis of the organization and you find that the bottleneck to growth is that leader, you got to tell them. You got to be honest, because I guarantee you will not be the first person to have said that they're the problem.
They're like, I knew it.
Yep. And so when you come from outside and you don't know them, and in a few times of being in their organization, you pinpoint them, a lot of times the light bulb comes on when people say, oh, this guy doesn't even know me, and he says I'm the problem. Maybe I am the problem.
I think that's one of the points that it's like not being emotionally attached to the situation is such an advantage, right? Because and that sometimes we see coaches having coaches, right? It's because we're inside our own noises, right? We're like in so much noise, and then you have someone and it's like, oh, it's because of this, and you're like, oh, why have I thought of that like that, right? So that happens more often than we want to admit, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I mean, every coach should have a coach, right? You should, because you can get caught in a bubble and groupthink, and I have a coach. I have someone that I talk to, and it helps me on my leadership journey, because now as my business grows, I'm going to have to think about being sometimes less tactical and more strategic. And so I'm going to have to share leadership or turn over responsibility and delegate, just like I try to coach all of my leaders on doing, right? And so, I have to have that same self-awareness to say, hey, you know what? I'm struggling with this aspect of it. Let me talk through some things with my coach. And so it's always helpful to keep perspective.
Right. I mean, I'm going to jump on that boat, the delegation boat, because your work seems pretty hands-on, right? We're talking about in-person coaching. I imagine now you're handling a business and you have more employees now. You're in the growing phase right now. So how do you think about capacity so you don't stretch yourself too thin?
Well, I think the coaching capacity is less than the consulting capacity, because the consulting capacity takes so much more. Like, we have to be, embedded into their processes. We have to learn their standard operating procedures. We have to learn a lot about what the company does, their product range, their their core values. That takes a lot of capacity. Coaching is more about either the individual or the team, right? So we also coach teams, but not big teams, right? So it's a team of 5, right? And we may do a session with them, but it's more about the individual, right? And so at that point, we do make the connection between, like I said earlier, what the organization does and the bottlenecks in the organization, and to how you fit into that. But consulting is very different than coaching when it comes to what we offer and what we need in capacity. And so, I could probably take on, in my team, we could probably take on, 5 to 6 coaching sessions a week between us in person. And like I said, sometimes we do virtual. It's not our preferred method, but we do virtual if the client has a time constraint and can only meet virtually. So, but yeah, the capacity for coaching and consulting is very different for us.
Okay, makes sense. Now, I'm curious where you're taking all this, right? You brought it up earlier about scaling and all of that. So, looking ahead, where do you see the business going? Are you thinking about scaling, which you are, hiring, which you already told me you are, or is there a next step you're excited about? I mean, what's the future entails,
Well, I'm excited about both of those, right? Because we want to gain market share, right? And we're very specific, we're, I guess, like Liam Neeson in a little way. We have a very specific set of skills, special set of skills. So our niche is there, right? And so we're able to expand and grow in that niche. But, I'm excited about thought leadership, right? Because I want to make sure that as we develop new strategies for leadership in the manufacturing world, we talk about it. I mentioned earlier about AI. A lot of my clients right now are concerned about how AI is going to affect their plants. And so right now we're working with them. We're developing material on AI integration into manufacturing plants. So we want to position ourselves as the thought leaders in whatever technological advancement happens in the manufacturing realm. And so it won't just be leadership. It just won't be training. It will be thought leadership. It will be innovation. That's where HMA is going next.
Sounds like a full circle experience. You're like implementing systems, but making sure leadership is aware of the importance of it, and the team is following the instructions. Because if you just implement systems and the leadership's not buying it, it's not going to happen.
That
right?
is 1,000% true. If you can have the best design system in the world, but if the leaders don't buy into it, the people won't buy into it, and then that system will fail. I've seen it happen before.
Oh, I've seen it happen in my career. I was like in HR, especially, right? So HR is trying to push an agenda and leadership really is not buying it. And you have your department manager and he's like, hey, don't even listen to it. It's like because his boss doesn't care. And it's just HR and companies trying to push in a cool agenda or we care agenda or whatever agenda to look good or what. I don't even understand sometimes because they pay a lot for this stuff and you see stuff that simply don't stick, right?
Absolutely. And I've got a little bit of a story to share that touches that. One of my new clients, I took them on as a team, a coaching team. They had in wholesale turnover. Corporate wiped out the entire leadership team and brought in a wholesale brand new group of people. So they had less than, when I took them on, they had less than a year in leadership roles there. And they came from other facilities. And so they had to learn that culture, right? They had to learn the culture that was existing to help shape the culture of the future. And so they said, hey, we don't know where to start. And I said, well, let's start where they ended. Let's learn the lessons of the previous group. And so let's start there. And so, we've been working together now for 6 months. We came up with an entire new value statement, a new mission and vision. And so now they're implementing that. And so what they're doing now is they're now getting the buy-in from their next level of leaders. And so now HMA is started to coach their middle managers, and eventually we'll start to coach their frontline managers. And so we're pushing down from the top that new mission and vision. And that's how that system is being changed from about 40 years of stagnation to now with this brand new management group. And people are receptive because they're new, right? You get a honeymoon phase as a leader. And so now what they're seeing is that they're putting together a winning strategy, and it's paying off. They've reduced turnover in the last year. Productivity is up. Safety is better. And so they're doing well, and that system is working because the leadership bought into that, because I challenged them to do it. And now we're pushing it down to everyone else, and they're out there cheerleading the change for the plant.
Interesting. Okay. Now I got to ask you not one last thing, but one thing about this specific topic, which is people, they care about themselves, right? At the end of the day, it's a what's in it for me most of the time, especially with, we're talking about corporate world. And sometimes I see companies pushing an agenda, but that doesn't mean anything to an employee if he doesn't understand intention, if he doesn't understand where that will take him, right? So do you think the right push is towards employees' agenda, like, hey, we're gonna grow together, or are you more towards the company's agenda, but not necessarily tied up with employees?
I tell every client that I work with, the most important resource that you have is your people. Don't think about your machines. Don't think about your processes. Don't think about your raw materials. The most important resource you have is your people. And if you grow those, everything else will take off. And so it has to be employee focused. It has to be employee centered, because if it does not, then you're going to struggle, even if you're a great leader, right? If a great leader grows their people. And so, an agenda is fine, but my my push to everyone else is that, look, as an individual, the more you grow, the more access to opportunity that you have. So when you improve your emotional intelligence, when you improve your ability to active listen, when you improve your ability to delegate and develop people, other folks will see that, and those opportunities for greater leadership will come up to you. Which is why the management team at this company that I just mentioned are now having us coach their middle managers, and they want us to coach their frontline managers. Why? Because they want a pipeline of succession as everyone moves up. And that's a key aspect of business is, hey, if everything falls apart, if I leave as the leader, then the organization was poorly built.
Oh, that's so true. Okay. Makes perfect sense. And, of course, whenever we're aiming towards the next chapter, like you are, there's always something we're refining in the present. So what are you currently trying to improve or tighten up in your business right now?
We've got to automate more things, right? So that's one of the things that I think we can do. We can be more efficient, right? We spend a lot of time point of use at the client. And so my team is decentralized, right? And so they, my goal was never to have a brick and mortar office. We're a decentralized team. We work at the client. And so I think that gives us a little bit of comfort level, right? We don't have to come into the office every day. We have our weekly meetings. But one of the things that we can do, right? We can be much more efficient on our marketing. You talked about that earlier, right? And so our social media marketing, our new offerings, our email campaigns, all those things that we do, we can automate those things to make them a lot more efficient. I just have to do that right now. I'm still such a people person. I'm still so people focused that I'm not necessarily utilizing or maximizing all the tools that can actually help connect me to new markets and new businesses. So I got to shore that up.
And you have that interesting positioning, right? Since we were talking earlier, it's a full circle and a hybrid model. So we're talking about, are we going to push coaching, or are we going to push consulting? So you're in that crossroad, or are we trying to do a position of emerging stuff, merge those two? So that's interesting. It's interesting to see what future brings, right? About that, and what's the the testing and the right positioning? Because as you mentioned, referrals are great, right? The best of the best, but they can get you so far because there's a
Sure.
ceiling, and sometimes they dry out, and we have employees and all that. So
Yes.
yeah, makes
Yes.
perfect sense, you know.
Yeah. And like I said, we've been blessed to have a base of referrals that are consistent long-term retainer clients, right? And so, but like you said, you can't put all of those eggs in that basket, because this is a this is predicated on the people that you have relationships with. If that person leaves that company, there's no guarantee that the person who replaces them is going to want to continue, with that contract. And so, the best thing that we can do is start to scale now. Now that we have a strong financial base, now that we have a strong client base, now we can start to scale and stack. And so, without fear of the company going under because we lose a single client.
Mm, makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Michael, I want to tap into your experience for a
Yeah.
second, okay?
Yeah. Of course.
Because people listening can really benefit from this. I mean, you've been in the game long enough to hear all kinds of advice, you know?
Mhm.
Some are good, some are bad.
Yes.
So let's hear. So what's one piece of business advice you hear all the time that you think
Mhm.
it's overrated or misunderstood?
Hmm. Um, that's a great question, Pedro, because there's so many things, and I like to call them tropes out there about business, right? And everyone is like, I hear all the time is location, 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 right? And the world changed about 6 years ago,
Mhm.
right? The world changed. You now are not confined to a finite amount of markets, right? You now you can connect to the world. I think one of the biggest things that is probably misunderstood or misappropriated is the fact that you should not have a big picture thinking, right? Folks say, well, start small and then grow. I don't necessarily share that mentality, right? I came from a world where I got to travel to 30 countries. I got to go all around the world, and I have a global perspective. And eventually, my company will go international. In a few years, our plan is to start looking at clients in other countries. And I have contacts in the UK. I have contacts in Eastern Europe. I have contacts in South America who are all saying, when are you going to be available to coach some of my people to come down to my plants? We're not at that capacity yet, but eventually we will be. And so if I did not have a big picture perspective to look ahead and see what I wanted HMA to be, not just 2 years from now, but 25 years from now, then I would be missing out on opportunities or would not have the belief that we can meet that demand. And so I know the startup world sometimes is, people want to go slow, but I always say have a grand vision.
Mm.
Have a grand vision. And if people tell you not to have a grand vision, don't listen to them. Have a grand vision. Have an ultimate, perfect world view of what your company can be.
It costs the same as a small
It,
one, right? It's just a dream.
absolutely, absolutely, right. A big dream or a
Yeah,
small dream, same cost.
exactly. And on the other side, Michael, what's a
Yeah.
piece of advice you wish more people actually took seriously?
Be prepared. Be prepared. Right. I think a lot of people don't do due diligence the way they should. Right. We want clients, right? We want to fill up our client book, but sometimes every client is not the right client for you. It's not the right client for your firm, right? So do due diligence, be prepared, understand who you're taking on as a client. I see a lot of some coaches and some consultants who end up firing clients. Well, if you did your due diligence up front instead of just looking at what the contract price is, then you wouldn't be going through this. And
Mm.
so, we get to know, like part of our sessions with our clients is, that 3 4 5 session thing. At the end of that, we say in our contract, hey, if this is not, it's not giving you what you need, if it's not serving you, then we can walk away, no harm, no foul. But we always do that. We research the companies. We find out about the leader. We do leadership assessments, whether it be Myers-Briggs or DISC or something like that, to understand who our coaching client is going to be. And then we also get a chance to do some internal surveys with the organization to find out what the culture is of the organization. And we do all of that, before we sign a longer term contract. So we can say, hey, we can give you a few coaching sessions, we can do some training sessions, but at that point, I don't think this is the right fit for us. And so do due diligence. That's what I wish people would take seriously, rather than just rushing in to sign contracts with clients.
Yeah, they can potentially, they're coming from a scarcity mindset, right?
Yeah,
They're like, oh, I need to land a client.
That's
I
right.
need to do X, Y, and Z, and they're not
That's
even
right.
a fit. They're not aligned, and that
Nope.
and down the road that will cost you more than
It
you think.
will.
So
It
yeah,
will. I'm telling you that there's a such thing as delayed gratification, right? Like you can, if you have a scarcity mindset, you'll always have famine. You'll always believe you're in famine, and that's not the way you're supposed to operate as a person, and certainly not the way that a leader operates their company.
Wow, yeah, that is so true. The way you framed it, it's like I worked at banking, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
had clients that were like 5, 6, 10 million at the bank, and they're like
Mm-hmm.
taking buses because they're
Yep.
afraid of spending $1,
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. And there, I had conversation that didn't make any sense at the time
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
21, and I'm like, what's up with that guy, man?
Yeah.
And it, I
Yeah.
mean, he's swimming in cash, and
Yeah.
it's like it is the scarcity mindset. It's the
Mm-hmm.
fear of losing everything
Yep.
at any given moment, and I mean, it's such a dread to live like that. I
Mm-hmm.
imagine I'm not, but I
You
I can only imagine.
you can't make good decisions long term. I mean, you can't make big decisions with a scarcity mindset.
Mm, that is so true. I love that, man.
Yeah.
And Michael, if someone
Yes.
listening wants to connect with you or follow your work, where can people find you and connect with you?
Well, you can always go to hmaconsultinggroup.com. You can connect with me there. You can follow us on everything from Instagram to TikTok. But the best way is always through LinkedIn. Link up with me. Send me an invite and let us know. Let HMA know what you're trying to do, and then we'll find the solution with you. So yeah, the traditional, my email info@hmaconsultinggroup.com. We're always open. Our door is always open for new clients.
Michael, there were a few things you shared today that really stuck with me.
Sure.
Okay. I would say I would open with a podcast in the superhero political background. I love that, man. I'm gonna reach out for that podcast. I'm gonna hear some episodes because
Yeah.
I'm kind of a nerd also. I
It's
love
all good,
Watchmen.
man.
Yeah, I loved all comics, man, especially
Yeah,
the old
the
school
nerd,
comics.
the nerds are gonna inherit the earth, man.
And also I want to highlight, the hybrid application
Mhm.
that you have, like the coaching/consulting.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I've seen a lot of former consultants, like I said, moving out of consult
Mhm.
because they couldn't solve the main issue, which is the main obstacle, the big boss
Yeah.
people, right? We all know
Yeah.
that. So that's very interesting. I'm gonna steal a quote that you said. Okay,
Okay.
people don't quit jobs; they quit leaders. I really like that quote. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so simple and it's so true. Also, I mean, the dream big, right? I like
Yep.
that advice. Gotta love it. And to be prepared, man. Thank God I made my introduction today.
Yeah.
I was like
Yeah.
doing my due diligence for
Yeah.
the episode here.
No, and to be honest with you, that kind of informed my quote. I was gonna go with something else, but then I thought about the fact that you went in and you found my LinkedIn and you found my background and my CV and you came with it, man. And I said, he was prepared. He
I'm
was
just
prepared for
relieved,
this.
man.
It meant a lot to him, so he prepared for it. And if your clients mean a lot to you, you'll prepare for them.
Yeah, that is so. I at the end of the day, I was just relieved. Imagine if I didn't. So I love it. Okay, I mean, I appreciate what you do, Michael, and I
Yeah, man.
appreciate you being here, sharing so openly today. It was great having
Yeah.
you on.
Yeah, this is great, Pedro. Thank you so much. We appreciate the highlight, and let's check back in a little while, and we'll tell you about our growth.
That's it for this episode of Career Coaching Secrets. If you enjoyed this conversation, you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this episode to catch future episodes. This podcast was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help career coaches scale their business to $100,000 years, $100,000 months, or even $100,000 weeks, all without burning out and making sure that you're making the impact and having the life that you want. To learn more about our community and how we can help you, visit joinpurplecircle.com.